it's already been through that first stage. It also affects the rising and yada yada. Does that look good?
Yeah, it looks really
Do
good.
you want me to put some flour here too, or do you think that's good?
Will the flower show up at all?
It might. You know what? I'm gonna do the rye just because it's a gray flour. I'm talking about when they're adding whole grain, be careful with the rye because it will turn their dough to granite. It will look. Do you have a time limit on this? How fast do you need me to talk?
Under 40 minutes.
Okay.
No, 3 to 5 minutes is where
3
we
to
try to
5.
be.
I'm used to doing like regular TV segments, so sometimes I talk really fast. That's why, because I'm used
That's
to like
good.
hey, we're interviewing you for a 3-minute segment or 5-minute segment. If you tell me how much time, I can.
Ram it in there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can fit it in there. So okay.
We'll get it there.
Just knowing.
We'll start out right here.
Okay.
I'm just going to elevate that up just a little. Probably have pizza breath, or even worse.
Too.
So.
Okay, and I think one of the things we probably don't mention very often is that they're not necessarily affiliated or part of Panhandle Milling. So
Okay.
even though this is back here, it's fine.
Okay.
But this is one of our favorite brands. So
Okay.
let's say, hey chef, what's one of your favorite brands of grain, or where would you
Awesome.
find like the most premium organic grain online? This is one. So
I like
that
that.
helped.
We'll start out with that.
Okay.
Start out right here. Welcome back to Name That Grain. I'm here with Chef Stephanie Peterson, and Chef Peterson, I tell you what, very impressed with Panhandle Milling. And right in front of us here, some examples of some very high-end grain. Tell me about your favorites.
Okay, so some of my favorite grains are ones that are a little bit more difficult to find. We have a few here that are easy to find, but the ones that are difficult to find can all be found on organicgrains.com. That's one of my favorite websites to find them. And it's the only whole grain organic company online that you can click a button and get that milled to order fresh, clean flour sent to your house. I've never seen anyone else who does it, so it's a pretty cool website for that, but also for finding a little of the harder to find grains that you want to add something exotic or a little bit different to your breads or your flours or your pizza crust and flours. Some flours that are exotic to your pizza crust. That's how you would do it, so that's where you would find it.
Now, let's see how you're going to do. Out of 5 that we have in front of us, you get 5 out of 5. For our viewers, their left to right, what do we have here on their left?
So on their left, they have what's called a tricolor quinoa. Now, quinoa is a complete protein. It's considered an ancient seed grain, which is a pseudo grain. And when that is being added to pizza or breads, one thing you're going to want to look for is a grain that's already been pre-rinsed or sprouted before you turn it into a flour. I prefer the sprouted varieties for turning it to flour because they have a great depth of flavor already, and they're just amazing for that. If I'm just going to want some extra pops of color, some extra grain in there, I am going to cook it as I would cook rice. 20 minutes in water, do equal parts, just like you would for rice. You go cook it in a rice cooker at the same settings, and it'll make it perfect for that. And then cool it and add it to your dough. Just about a cup to 2 loaves of bread. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, good thing to know,
We're
right?
going to have some really good looking bread there. Exotic bread, but it really doesn't take much effort.
It doesn't, and it takes maybe 10% of the finished amount of flour and dough to add that extra oomph to it. So
okay, right next to it.
So right next to it is when a lot of people are used to seeing chia seed that is black, but this is a white chia seed. And white chia seed, for me, it's one that I've been able to add to a lot of my baking doughs and ingredients to add a lot of omega-3s. It's considered to be an ancient seed grain as well as pseudo grain, and it's called a superfood. It's a complete protein as well, but it will absorb like 10 times its weight in water. Wow. So if you add this to your breads and doughs, just a very small amount will go a long way. But what it does is with that extra liquid that you'll add to it, it will help keep that finished product nice and moist for an extended amount of time instead of having to add a lot of preservatives. So that's one of my pet favorites. Aesthetically, it doesn't do anything. It's a white, clean looking thing, where the black ones, when you put them in there, people kind of go, are there bugs in my bread? What is that? And so this is a really great way to avoid the whole bug argument with your kids. Yeah, it's great.
And right in the middle?
So the one right in the middle, that is called amaranth. It's one of the smallest grains, and it's a superfood, complete protein. When it's cooked, it has about the same consistency and texture as a grit or a cream of wheat.
Okay.
A little earthier, a little nuttier. And one of the cool things about amaranth is that can be put in a dry pan on the stove, like a skillet, a dry skillet, and you just get the skillet super hot, and then you put a few of those seeds in there, and it will pop. We call it Smurf popcorn at my house. It's just really teeny tiny. And that has a really almondy, nutty flavor note to it. So it can be actually added to any of your baked goods to kind of give them that nut tone without having the cost of nuts that you're adding to it. And then it's also, like I say, complete protein and a superfood. So saying like an amaranth bread, one of my pet favorites is a chocolate amaranth bread with popped amaranth in it. And it's just really killer good. So that's a fun one to do.
And this coming from, an acclaimed author, 4 books. And when it comes to bread, you know where your way around, and you also have your favorites. Right here next to it, a little bit larger.
A little bit larger. Okay, so people look at this and they're like, is it some kind of brown rice? What in the world is that? This is actually the kamut grain that we have been talking about often on the show. Kamut, on its own, as you see it, it looks like a really long piece of wheat, and it is. It's the longest. It's like a third longer than most of the grains of wheat that you'll see out there because it's never been genetically. And most grain. Okay, I want to say all wheat in America is not GMO. So none of that's GMO. It's just this one has never been hybridized or cross-pollinated with other wheats. And so the way that it looks now is the same way it looked in Egypt thousands of years ago. So
Now, the use and hydration of that.
So the hydration with this, I cook this one, if I'm going to want like whole grains of the kamut in my bread, I will partially cook it, about 20 minutes, equal parts water. And then that gives it enough moisture that it goes into my bread, and just like maybe a half a cup to a loaf, not a lot, just to give it that chunk. You can also crack the kamut and have kind of a stronger, and then what you would do is give it a little bit of a pre-soak. So equal parts water and kamut cracked, and then about a cup to a loaf of your bread, or to 4 pizzas, something like that, to just give it that really strong whole chewiness and nuttiness. And that's what this one is, because it's such a high protein. It has such a tooth feeling. It's just that al dente, pasta-like, it's delicious.
That's awesome.
So, great
And
grain.
finally, here on the end.
So this one here on the end, this is a fun one because a lot of people will look at this flour and they'll say, well, that looks, like it's kind of gray, kind of like a weird color. This is 100% whole rye flour. Now rye, the grain, is a little bit gray looking. And when you grind it, the flour is gray looking. When you get rye bread, though, like a good rye or good pumpernickel, it's like dark brown, right? That's because the bakers will add molasses or cocoa, some kind of aesthetically pleasing color to that to make it so that it doesn't look like a lump of marble sitting on your countertop.
Right.
So when you're going to incorporate a whole grain that you're not necessarily familiar with, look into it. See why this looks like it's awful, but is there something wrong with the flour? Is there something wrong with maybe how I was thinking I was going to use it into my crust? So yeah, you want to make a rye crust and do something totally different than anybody else is doing, great, but make sure you pop in a little bit of molasses, so to make it work well.
That is really good. I hear that bell. Ding, 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 ding. You got 5 out of 5. Would you like to go to the bonus round?
Bonus round is good.
Okay, what do we
it.
have here on the end?
Okay, so this one is one of my pet favorite flours. This is a sprouted einkorn flour. Now, sprouted flours are becoming increasingly popular across the country, mainly because when a grain is sprouted, it goes through the initial process it's the amylase stage of the seed, where it gets that depth of flavor. The nutrition is increased quite a bit. One thing that we have found with our world-renowned food scientist is that even though it has gone through some of those changes in the initial 24-hour sprouting, it hasn't changed the starch for it to make the dough not work the way it should. So sometimes you'll get sprouting that's happened a little bit longer. If you try to do sprouted bread at home and you haven't got the right flour, your bread will turn out horrible. This also does not work for long, slow fermentations as well. The protein content is changed just a little bit with that sprouted flour. But it's a great mix and have right away and still have that depth of flavor that you would have had in a bread that was long 3-day ferment. You want that amazing, ridiculous flavor, but hey, maybe your staff can't be around for 3 days, or maybe you just don't have that ability. This is a great way to supplement and add that flavor to your doughs and have that wonderful finished product that has that great flavor. Just lost my hat. Okay.
That's okay. This is, live. That's the way it happens. But we're going to press on,
Okay, we're pressing on.
Finally on the end.
So this one is one of the flours that they do also. It's a brown rice flour. So a lot of times when people are trying to figure out their gluten-free, their doughs and what works really well for what, one of my favorite ones to use for that is a brown rice flour as opposed to a white rice flour. It just has those nutty notes and textures. Just a different flavor than just a white pasty flour. And one of my other pet favorites that isn't here is sorghum. I usually use sorghum and that, and then like the sprouted quinoa, those three together, kind of like the trifecta of beauty. They just end up making wonderfully tasty gluten-free products that have wonderful finished taste.
Your family, it tastes good, that's right. Your family and staff at work must be spoiled, and I got to congratulate you, 5 out of 5, plus the bonus round. Stephanie from Panhandle Milling, thanks so much for being on again.
Much. I love it. You're welcome.
Nice job. Okay. Welcome back. We are here with Sister Stephanie Peterson. And Sister Peterson, you're an acclaimed author. You have some really cool books on food storage. But really what caught my attention was gourmet food storage. When you're living off that food storage, the word gourmet merely makes your antenna go up. What? Yeah. But actually, you go way beyond food storage. You can do food storage, but you can also do meal prep for the whole year if you want.
Absolutely.
Is that right? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, how it started was I was getting together my year's supply just because I was doing my due diligence and I wanted my family to survive. Should anything happen to me. We were living in a little tiny condo at the time, and as a chef, we always plan all of our purchasing for the restaurant from a menu that made perfect sense to me. And so what I started doing was I figured out doing a menu, a 7-day-a-week menu. And we started with spaghetti because it was my husband's absolute favorite thing. He would eat that 24/7 every day, all the time. He loves spaghetti. And I got in my mind, okay, so every Monday night we're going to have spaghetti, and it's for my family to have spaghetti. It's a jar of spaghetti sauce. This is like bare bones special, right? Like a jar of spaghetti sauce and a pound of pasta. Okay. So I figured out 52 weeks in the year. Went down and bought 52 packages of pasta, 52 jars of spaghetti sauce, and I stuck it in my apartment. And then I kept going with our menu throughout, and figured out what I needed. About 6 months into it, maybe 8 months into it, I thought, I probably should start rotating some of these things out. And then I was thinking about it and went, where did I put those jars of spaghetti sauce? Because you don't want to look like a hoarder or like a, crazy survivalist. You want people to come over and not see cases of spaghetti sauce in your living room. So I'd put them somewhere. I couldn't remember where it was. And I had 2 small children at the time, a newborn and a 4-year-old, and lack of sleep and all that. So I was going crazy and thinking, oh my gosh, someone's going to jump on the bed and they're going to be spaghetti splashes all over the place. And right about that time, I had gone down to one of the food storage stores locally, and they had a can of dehydrated tomato powder, and I did this in the aisle, and the owner came running over. He thought there was a mouse. He thought I was being this crazy freak, and I was like, can you make spaghetti sauce with this stuff? And he was like, I don't know, maybe you should buy some and try it out. So I took it home. I made just add water spaghetti sauce, started putting all my seasonings in it that would equal my 1 jar, and then I went, okay, that is a really small space. I wonder if I could put everything for that jar in 1 jar and have it stored in one place, so when I want to go and make dinner, it's all in one place.